Welcome back to This Week in Agribusiness. May, of course, is Mental Health Awareness Month, and this is an issue that has really moved into the spotlight in rural America in recent years, and it's definitely a good thing, in my opinion. That outreach is continuing, and this week we're talking with Chris Martinez. She's working on putting together a documentary to help tell these stories in rural America. And Chris, thank you so much for joining us this week.
Thanks for having me, Mike. I appreciate it.
Let's learn a little bit about you. How did you get your start in the industry of agriculture?
So I've had a marketing company for the last 20 years, and I've spent a lot of my career out in rural America. We focus on agriculture quite a bit. I also have a lot of experience with mental health and suicide in my own family. I come from a farm family, and unfortunately, suicide, both attempts and completed suicides, are a part of my lived history.
And that's not necessarily unique in agriculture. These issues are certainly everywhere in the industry, and this is something you want to tell the story of. Can you tell us a little bit about Living Wide Open, the documentary project you're working on?
Right. So Living Wide Open is a documentary on mental health and suicide in rural America. And we're approaching this project from 5 different perspectives. So we have survivor stories of people who have experienced the death of a loved one to suicide, such as Lamont, a farmer from Alabama who lost his wife to suicide in 2016. We're also having conversations with mental health experts and advocates, such as the JED Foundation, which works to prevent suicide among youth. And we also will be talking about bipartisan issues that would help at a national infrastructure level for mental health, such as the Rural Behavioral Health Access Act, which would provide telehealth services to those in need.
Certainly vital, that expansion of telehealth services, providing that mental health resource to folks out in the countryside. Chris, my question next would be, why now? What makes this issue especially relevant here in 2024 in your mind?
Right. Well, it is, right now it's Mental Health Awareness Month, but that mental health awareness is every month, and it's all the time. And especially since the pandemic, mental health has been on a decline across all demographics. May is Mental Health Awareness Month, which is every month, really. In 2023, there were 50,000 deaths by suicide, which is the largest number on record. And every 11 minutes in our country, someone dies by suicide. So these are really alarming numbers, but it isn't just about the statistics. It's about the impact of suicide on families, on communities, that radiates out, the grief radiates out for years, even generations to come.
It does, and that grief can hit especially hard, perhaps, in an isolated community, in a rural area. Chris, as you think about rural mental health in particular, what makes you want to focus on that issue besides your history in the industry?
Right. So rural America faces some unique challenges with mental health. Wyoming, Montana, and Alaska consistently report the highest rates of suicide. And if we look at some of the top reasons for that, the isolation, people living and working in rural communities, people who spend a lot of time alone. It's really important to, that can take a toll on anybody. So it's really important to keep those connections together. Rural communities face a severe shortage of healthcare resources and mental health. And finally, there's what some might refer to as a cowboy up attitude, right? And where you keep things to yourself and you figure it out.
Right. Walk it off.
Walk it off. That's right.
Farm. Yes.
That's right. And that can be a bit of a double-edged sword, right? That's that resiliency that comes from an attitude like that and a way of living is what makes our farmers and ranchers so successful. But it's also it can be a real problem for anyone who who needs help. It might keep them from asking for help.
That's what it all comes down to, is seeking help, the ability to get outside your own brain sometimes and talk to somebody, which is where those rural health advocates can make a play. Chris, as you start this conversation, or as you perpetuate this conversation rather, what do you hope people take away?
Well, suicide is so hard to talk about. It's a very scary topic, but it's so important. And just because it's complex, it's also preventable. And so having these conversations, knowing that it's okay to not be okay, knowing that it's okay to feel what you feel and to ask for help, That's what these conversations are showing us time and again, is the more that people talk about it, the less alone they feel.
And the more you talk about it, the more often you can find solutions that maybe wouldn't have occurred to you, Chris. And I imagine that's something you want to highlight as well.
Right, right. Solutions are something that we really focus on in this film, and specifically with the JED Foundation. They've worked with rural Americans all over the country, specifically on firearm safety and secure storage of firearms. If you can reduce access to firearms, which is the number one method of suicide, it's just going to work to keep everyone safer.
All right. Chris, let's look bigger picture. If we've got folks out there in the audience right now who are maybe grappling with some mental health challenges, what's your best advice?
So there are a number of resources people can call or text. For anyone experiencing a mental health emergency, they should call or text 988. There is also the Farmer Helpline. We'll put some numbers up on screen, I think, for that. And then for anyone who has a story that they want to share, whether it's surviving a suicide attempt or the death of a loved one to suicide, we'd love to hear from people. And so they can email us at hello@lushverde.com.
hello@lushverde.com. You're continuing to collect stories for the documentary, and we'll be watching for that in the time to come. Chris, excited to see what happens with Living Wide Open. Thank you so much for joining us here this week. Stay with us. We'll have more This Week in Agribusiness when we return.